Hello, hi everyone. I am really excited to be here this morning. I was really nervous that I would forget all the things that I've written, all the notes that I've made, and everything I plan to tell you, and trying to remember all of those. And now I'm kind of like feeling the same, but for a different reason. My brain is really full of so much inspiration and so many ideas from the conversations we've had just so far today. Particularly loved the talks that we had in the breakout group about how we measure or don't measure people. I think that's really fascinating. Unlocking the value and potential of people and working with people as human beings. This is also amazing. This is not part of my talk as such, but I couldn't not put it in after the conversation, so I just squeezed this in. It's one of my favorite quotes from Dale Carnegie. And I relate to it so much, it helps me understand myself in lots of situations, and it helps me understand other people that I interact with, that I work with, that I come across. And I think it has a relevance to some things that might resonate to other people and some of the other things that have been raised today. Okay, so I work for Buffer. It's a social media scheduling tool. I'm going to share a bit of the Buffer story, but my focus really is going to be today on something I'm particularly excited to be talking about and passionate about, and that's culture and values. So Buffer is known for two things. It's known for its product and its service and in social media and marketing, but it's also quite known for our culture. And so just a little bit about me. I've been with Buffer for 2 years. I'm a happiness hero. That's my role in customer service. I respond to customer emails, people that have questions about Buffer, need something fixed or adjusted, finding their way around, or letting us know about bugs and problems. So that's what I do. The setup of Buffer, and this is one of the more interesting things about Buffer, I think, and there may be some questions, and questions are very, very welcome at the end or later on or by email or however. We're set up as a completely distributed team, so we are a remote team. We haven't got an office at all. We did have one at one point. It wasn't really used. We have people, over 80 people, working from all over the world, and we have some amazing things that it could be a whole separate talk about our setup and about how we work and how we manage productivity and communication. And so again, questions about that, very, very welcome. Very happy to answer those. But I wanted to talk a bit more about culture and values, because our culture is in some ways a result of how we're set up, but it's a lot more than that. And it's something that I think, because we've explored culture so much as a company, and because we've identified a set of values that we all kind of subscribe to, we all work with, we all feel passionate about. We have these things that unite us, and that's really important to us, I think, as a remote team, that we have people who are from a hugely diverse set of backgrounds and environments and countries and communities, all working together with a united set of goals, a united approach, a united way of working. So that unification and that identity of us as a team of people who are just completely separated, not actually physically together for a vast majority of the time is something that's very important to us. And we've taken quite a lot of time to explore it, and we've had some adventures with it, and some things have happened that have been related to and informed our values, and they've developed as a result. So I wanted to ask, by show of hands, if people are willing to let me know if you've read or come across this book. Cool. Okay. When I first came across it, when I first heard about how to win friends and influence people, I kind of dismissed it. I hadn't read it. My initial impression was that it was like a sales manual. It was a bit creepy, maybe how to manipulate people, how to encourage people around to your way of thinking, maybe against their will, maybe. So when I read it, I was really, really blown away. It's an incredible book. There's so much wisdom, psychology, advice about humanity, about relationships, and about not just work, not just business, but also how you relate to and understand the factors that influence how you work with anyone, like with managers, with employees, with neighbours, with friends. So there's a lot of power in this book, and a lot of, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because our founders read this book very early in the Buffer journey, going back about 5 years, when it was just a handful of people, and they were so inspired by a lot of the content in this book and a lot of the things that are, a lot of the advice and the wisdom that's in there, that it had a really deep impact, and as a result, it then influenced the set of values that we established. When trying to put together the talk and what I wanted to talk about, what I wanted to express, I realized that I'm missing some of the vocabulary and some of the sort of constructs to really define what culture is. And that's one thing we've talked a lot about, like what we want to get out of this conference. And one thing for me personally is to really listen and learn and understand from other people about their experience of culture and their definition and what it means to them. So again, conversations I'd love to have. Please seek me out if that's something you're happy to talk about with me. So I had a crack at it. I was on the train and I was thinking, culture is something that I feel or I see it as being a combination of lots of factors. So I'm on the train on the way to Bournemouth, and I thought, what makes Bournemouth Bournemouth? Let me take the question I have of culture and apply it to something else. And I came up with the climate, the amazing climate. So grateful for that today. I know it's not always like that. I lived here for a little while. The landscape, the geography, the history of the town, the architecture, the way it's laid out, the parks and the gardens and the buildings, and that big balloon that sometimes goes up and down. That's a kind of a unique characteristic of Bournemouth. It's also the people that are here, the people that retire here, the people that live here, people that come here for day trips or conferences. When you get off the train and there's people coming and going for those different reasons, that's all part of it. So I'm looking at these different aspects, these different factors, and thinking a combination of all those things makes Bournemouth what it is. And so when I'm looking at defining what culture is for Buffer, I think that it's sort of the human version of those factors, perhaps. I'm struggling with this, and I'd love to hear ways to improve. I spoke to Heather, who's made those amazing cakes, and I said, I was trying to work through a baking analogy with ingredients and recipes and kitchens and things, and is culture the cake? I don't know. But I got to the Bournemouth analogy, and that's the one I'm sort of sticking with for now. So with Buffer, with our culture, I think are the factors that have created or defined our culture as much as I am able to, is our team setup, our team structure and our distribution. So the fact that we have people from all over the world. Some people are permanently at home with their families, some people are working in coffee shops, some people are working and traveling and experiencing the world of a digital nomad and literally laptop and a backpack and off they go. That's a factor, absolutely. It's the personalities of us as people. That's got a contributing factor for sure. There are people with very different personalities, introverts, extroverts, everything in between. I've started to look at Myers-Briggs. It's fascinating, seeing sort of how I identify and how other people I work with, the people that match and the people that are the opposite. That's really interesting to sort of look into. But those personality traits and then the dynamics between people and the way that people work together, that's the individual. So individual personalities as a factor of culture, I think, is something that's important to recognise. Or I've recognised it, I think. And it's also a culmination of our shared experience. It's our story and our journey. So Buffer is a startup, is a tech startup. It's 5 years old. And we've had some amazing successes that we're very lucky and very proud of. We've had some challenging times that we've gone through. And that history and that aspect and that past also creates, in lots of ways, the characteristics of our company, and with that experience and that background, that's the things that we talk about, and that's the things that we've learned from, and that's had an influence. That's a changing thing, but still a cultural factor, I think. And the final thing I've got is that so I talk about our personalities, but also I think about beliefs and behaviours, follows on from that, but it's how we work together and how we approach working with each other. And that part is what I think kind of distills into values. So Buffer has focused on those beliefs and those behaviours, and with the influence of Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, we have defined a set of values. So I've got those. Might be wondering about them. And they're so big and colourful. Great. So they are 10 values, and we have a slide deck which goes into a bit more depth and adds a bit more context to what these are about. And I will share a link later on, maybe the Slack channel, that'd be ideal, if you want to look into that. But I didn't want to just read all that information out. But this is a great sort of quick 10-pointer thing. And the thing that you might recognize straight away is that they are actionable. They're pretty much all, this is what we do, this is our approach, this is how we want to do this. Things that behaviors that we have sort of nailed down. And I wanted to sort of talk about these and a little bit about how they impact real life, because I'm aware of things like values, things like culture, being quite intangible, being quite hard to define, and people questioning like the impact of them and the value of them and how important they are and what influence they'll have on your daily life. So I wanted to sort of share that experience from me as somebody sort of living within a team that works hard at these values. So it's something that you do. A lot of these things are kind of practical, actionable, everyday things. So choose positivity, listening, listen first, communication. So when people are talking to each other, you can hear it in the way people put words together, people put questions together. You see it in the way that people write. And that's something that because we're a remote team, we do have a lot of video calls. We use Zoom to catch up. We have team daily syncs. We have other meetings and things that we do in sort of live video. But we have a lot of written communication, So it's really, really important that the clarity factor is in there, that the positivity is in there. And so because we work towards that and we strive towards that, and it's really important to us, it has kind of almost become something that's apparent in our language. If you look at our conversations, they're probably you probably spot that they're different to maybe how other people might approach arranging a meeting or questioning status on a project or something like that. So these things are tangible. They are real in our working life and in our relationships with each other and our communication especially. But I'm also sort of very much aware that how things look from the inside is different to maybe how other people's perspective of Buffer might be. So I was about 2 months into my role, 2 months with Buffer, and I went to Manchester and hosted a meetup. And we had lots of people, sort of the Buffer community. We have a really, really engaged customers, and they're incredible. People came to the meetup to talk about Buffer, and I thought that at least 50% of the time we'd be talking about the product and social media and marketing and tips and that kind of thing, but not at all, really. It was about the transparency, and we have transparent salaries. It was about how we communicate as a team of remote workers at different time zones. And the culture, that's my first sort of realization that the culture of Buffer was actually something really, really significant to other people. And that it has a sense of, it's part of our identity. So culture and identity, I think, is really important, because when you talk about identity, you're talking about how people see you before they even start working with you, or how people, before you've got a chance to express yourself or build a relationship, people are seeing you and knowing you for these things, in our case. So, again, just to share a bit more about, I think I really am keen to get across what this looks like and how it impacts real life. One thing is that the values of positivity sort of have resonated with me personally. I'm naturally a smiley, happy person, but that's been something that I've never sort of really dug into or really investigated in myself. That's just something people would tell me that. People would say I'm smiley, and that's great, and I felt good about that, for sure. But in some ways, this value of choosing positivity, putting the intent in there, has been something that I've been able to use these values in some ways like a toolbox. I've been able to be in a situation that's challenging, that's difficult, and sometimes it can be really a struggle to find the silver lining in a challenging situation or some bad news. But there is value in that, and there is being a creature of emotion, it's sort of recognizing that, this is a problem right now, and this is the light at the end of the tunnel, and looking towards that and going in that direction, that kind of approach, and having that intent to not just being a happy person, but sort of knowing how to work that and make that impactful and useful. The other one I wanted to show as an impact on my real life, and this is work and life as well. This does go beyond. We talked about the effect of negative energy and how it's contagious, and I believe that positive energy is also contagious. I think if you can dive into that and express that and choose to express that, then it does have a ripple effect. It does affect other people. So we have a focus on self-improvement, and so we actively encourage each other and support each other in our self-improvement goals. So if someone's like, oh, I kind of was thinking of taking up yoga or something, then there's a lot of encouragement and support in doing that. And it's such a culture and nurturing environment that, for me, in the first year at Buffer, I took French lessons for the first time since leaving school. I'd always kind of my French wasn't too bad at school, but I kind of completely have abandoned it. And so I picked that up again, and I took a piano lesson. I'd always wanted to do that, and I took 2 lessons, but I didn't go anywhere. But it's been one of those things, I want to do this, and I haven't really got the reason to do it, or the meaning, or the energy, or the motivation. And this environment, this focus on self-improvement, is the environment that has taken me and just given me that nudge in that direction. I also took 4 trapeze lessons, which was just amazing, and it looks terrifying, and a lot of people probably not even think of that as something they'd want to have a go at or try. It's a lot easier than you might think, hence I was able to do it, not being particularly fit or flexible or coordinated. But yeah, so that's just something that happened, and I'm pretty certain that it was as a result of this kind of focus and this encouragement. I just picked this, I just slotted this one in because it related to what I've just said about positive energy. And I think it's part of a bigger quote, and I think it's a Buddhist quote, but I really like that one, so I wanted to share that. Actually, I'm going to leave that one up there for a little while. I wanted to dive into the Buffer value of positivity just a little bit further, if that's okay. And I'd like to sort of just mention what it isn't, because it's really important that being a smiley person or being positive is not about ignoring negativity, and it's not about not addressing those things, because that is very, very important. Our Buffer value of positivity used to be always choose positivity, and that didn't actually give room for people to have a bad day or to feel okay about having a bad day. And so we took the always out, because we recognized that positivity is an approach to something, and it's not a smiley face, and it's not a fake smile. And self-care and addressing problems and anger or unhappiness, and working out where that comes from and dealing with it, to move it forward, to solve it and resolve it, that's the positivity. So I hope that's something that might be a question about how we work in that way. And another thing about positivity in Buffer is our approach to feedback, and we call it feed forward, which isn't unique to us. I've seen that term used in other places. And what that is an approach that we instill very deeply, in that we are an environment and a culture of people that want to support each other and nurture each other. So if there's something that's okay, if you've seen something in me that's an opportunity for me to improve, I'm hoping that you're going to find a really kind way to say it to me, and I'll deal with it if not. But from the recipient's end, we assume positive intent with feed forward. And if you can help me be better at what I do, I'm incredibly grateful for that. And that's the spirit in which we feed forward is taken and given at Buffer, and that's through that value of positivity. So I think, time-wise, I'm going to just skip on a little bit. I want to talk about just another one of our values in a little way, and that's our value of transparency. So Our salaries are online, and we have a salary calculator. You can go to buffer.com/salary, and you can see for the different roles and the different locations and the different experience levels, you can adjust those factors and see what someone would get paid, or what you would get paid if you were doing that role in Buffer with that combination. So buffer.com/salary. Our revenues are also online. So money that's coming in from our customers, money that's going out, salaries, that's online, that's live as well. It's a bit more of a complicated URL, so I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's on our website, and I can share that, or if you want to ask me about that, I'll dig that out, no problem. Internal email. Every email between two employees is copied into the team list, and we all have access to all the team lists. And that's incredibly overwhelming. So you get very good at filters and organizing and working out how to make sure that emails that you need to see come to you. But we don't use email necessarily as our major communication method. We use Slack for live conversations, and a tool called Discourse for more of an announcement or conversation threads. And another aspect of transparency that I think is really, really important is that we share a lot through our blog. We have a blog that's called, the address is open.buffer.com. And we write a lot about marketing and social media, as expected, but we also share a lot through our blog, and we share transparently a lot of our challenges as much as our successes and things that we won't want to shout and wave about. We share when things go wrong, we share when we have problems, and we share when we're trying to improve things. And we do that because I think the three things that come out of transparency, in that context, it's an opportunity to open a conversation and to learn from other people. So unusually for some blogs, the comment section in some of those posts is incredibly rich. People are challenging us and being inspired by us and asking us questions, and difficult questions sometimes. And we are grateful for that, and that's the whole point of it. So trust, learning, and accountability. I think those things come from transparency and how we share a lot of things about Buffer that maybe other companies aren't comfortable to do. I think, yeah, slightly disordered. Now, I said before, I'm sort of still working towards the language of definition of culture and how to talk to people and understand how culture is for different people, and what are the common words, and what's the language, what are the themes. And that's one thing I think I'm going to be a lot clearer about by the end of this. And I think I'm a long way forwards already. What I would love to touch on for this part is just some thoughts I've gathered together for people that might be questioning how they define their own values and company values and culture. So these are thoughts that I've gathered together from other places, and hopefully there'll be some inspiration, or it'll be a starting point of a conversation that you might have with me or with colleagues, with your current employer, with your future employer down the line. So these are just some thoughts on putting together, building a thought process that might help you identify what are your values, because they are, so where do you start with that kind of thing? The first thing I think is for people to have a look at what are your own values, what's important to you, what are you striving for? Again, that's still a very open question, and it could still be sort of, where do I start? So another way to look at it is what are the significant milestones in your life? What have been sort of the peaks or the troughs, the highlights, the achievements, the challenges, the problems? How did you approach those? How did you get through them? What was your learning from those? Distilling those stories down into and a very personal element, I think, is a really great way of identifying sort of where you click, where you resonate, what drove you through. I think there's a touch of company culture, which is, Sanjay, was it Googleification? What was Googlify? So a company that was rebuilding their office wanted to use Google as a inspiration for that. And I think that's not the answer. There's lots of problems with that. But I think at the same time, your in-jokes and some of the fluffier things are part of your culture and part of your identity, part of our identity for sure. so we have phrases and we have stories and we have silly things that we do and that we say to each other. We use a lot of emojis. We end up loving specific emojis, animated GIFs, and that is just how we express, and it's the language that we use to talk to each other. The last slide that I've got is just we've ended up, sorry for the resolution of this, my colleague Mick sent this over to me this morning. I asked for it. He pulled it from Twitter because it wasn't an official, as you can tell, an official piece of graphics. But we've ended up ending meetings with these heart hands gestures, and it's, I think, a way of people not physically with each other to hug in a way. It's expressing a care and love for each other that we and a lot of happiness, a lot of love. So that's a silly thing in some ways, but I think it's an amazing thing, and it is part of our, I would say that's part of our culture for sure. One last thing I'd like to just mention on that, because I think a lot of people will probably want to dig into that part more. How do I identify my culture and build my culture? One sort of interesting way I saw, this is Jim Collins. If you were rebuilding your company and sending 5 people to Mars, which 5 people would you send? Understanding those 5 ambassadors for your company, why they are the respected people they are, why they are competent, why they're achieving, why are they those people, can be a good lens to understand why those people are a great fit for your company and represent your values. So maybe that's another approach. I think that's everything from me. Thank you very much for listening. Please do keep in touch.
I think that's probably a good place to give Dave a round of applause and say thank you very much for sharing that with us.